Hello YouTube. Northwest of India, in ancient Persia, the locals worshipped the god Ahura Mazda. They depicted this bearded man in a winged aircraft. In some drawings, Ahura Mazda holds something very similar to a steering wheel in his hand. As the legends tell, Ahura Mazda flew from the east on a golden firebird. Legends about the golden bird, Vimana, exists in another Asian country, in Indonesia, on the Vimanas. And notice, this name is very similar to the Indian Vimana, isn't it? The heroes of the Indonesian epic who lived on the top of the sacred mountain Mahameru are flying in North India. Let's expand on this. Garuda is a Hindu deity who is primarily depicted as the mount Vahana of the Hindu god Vishnu. This divine creature is mentioned in the Hindu, Buddhist, and Jain faith. Garuda is also the half-brother of the Devas, Gandharvas, Daityas, Danavas, Nagas, Vanara, and Yakshas. He is the son of the sage Kashyapa and Vinata. He is the younger brother of Aruna, the charioteer of the sun. Garuda is mentioned in several other texts, such as the Puranas and the Vedas. Garuda is described as the king of the birds and something like a kite-like figure. Garuda was known in prehistoric India, where his paintings were found in the Harappa, in the Sindhu River Valley, and then spread to all corners of the world affected by Indian civilization. His head, beak, and claws are like eagles, the light of the gods shining from its body, while Vimana is a representation of a space vehicle that moves beyond the speed of thought. The Indonesian Padmasana architecture is a sacred building as a place or position of God, and the back of it is often carved by two kinds of decoration. That's what there is on the back, carved out. Garuda and Vimana were placed on the Padmasana architecture. The use of Garuda points to the message that humans must try to free themselves from the bondage of worldly passions. Now I'm just reading to you philosophical interpretation of the beings in Asia, in Indonesia, for example, while the use of Vimana refers to the sky vehicle that carries passengers to the place they want to go to. The myth of Garuda has been recognized by the people of Bali, but the story of Vimana still is somewhat unclear. In the world of puppet art, both are depicted as vehicles of the gods, differing in appearance, one with a bird face and the other one with a giant face. Garuda, recognized in the Vedas, in worship myths, are mantras to reach the deepest level of consciousness of all reality. Then Garuda is really literally embodied in the Puranas, post-Veda, as a vehicle of Vishnu, as a rhythm, sound, saman, and sacrifice as yanya. Again, according to, I don't want to say interpretations, but beliefs of people in Asia, in some countries. In post-Vedic literature, Garuda is the vehicle of Vishnu, a bird-headed, sparkling brilliant like Agni. By the way, Russian word огонь, fire, seems to be coming from the word Agni. And it's also called Garudmat and Suparna, two terms that have been applied to sunbirds in Rig Veda. The bird is referred to as he who kills dragons or snakes. He who eats snakes. So we see there is Definitely a struggle against the Nagas. Some fight we may not understand, maybe ancient celestial wars. He is the one that has magic power to the effect of poison. Garuda is magical sky bird, generally depicted with wings, human arms, legs, and curved noses form beaks. Garuda is a vehicle, or Vahana Vishnu. He bears the deity on his shoulders, raises his sharp hand, 1,000 fingers like fiery claws of the sun. Very interesting depictions. And you start thinking about modern and science fiction depicted future space vehicles. They might have existed so many thousands of years ago on our planet. Now, Vilmana or Valimana is the name of a type of vehicle that can fly in outer space. The existence of the flying vehicle is mentioned in the Ramayana and Mahabharata books. Besides, it's also mentioned in the Jaina literature. In the Hindu Puranas, it is stated that the gods have their own vehicles, usually animals or chariots pulled by animals. Kuvera, the god of wealth, has a Vilmana, which is a different flying vehicle from the vehicle of the gods in general, and the object was obtained from Brahma. The Vilmana was given the name Pushpaka. Pushpaka is the vehicle of Lord Kuvera. Ravana seized Vilmana from Lord Kuvera, making Vilmana his personal vehicle. In the story of Bamantaka, when Bama invaded the Danishvara state, burning and destroying its castle, it left behind in the form of Pushpaka Manik, so it had a special vehicle to take off after destroying somebody's real estate. Vilmana is taken by Boma, then Boma is one who drives Vilmana. Vilmana is a vehicle that can bring the rider anywhere, depending on the rider. If the rider is a giant, Vilmana turns into a demon vehicle, stealth. If the rider is Rama, Vilmana becomes a Garuda that rises to the higher level layers of the sky. Garuda is recognized in several countries. In Tibet, it is called Hyung Kading, mystical bird whose shape resembles an eagle but is larger, so it is able to obstruct the sun due to its giant size. Great eagle Hyung Chen, an emanation of a mythical Buddha of the upper realm. In Japan, this eagle human creature is called Karura. Is imagined to have a breath of fire, golden wings, and wear a jeweled crown that has magical powers on its head. In the Rig Veda, it is explained, they called him Indra, Mitra, Varuna, Agni, and he was a heavenly winged Garutman. Wise men gave many titles. They called them Agni, Yama, Matariswan, descendants of golden-colored birds in the waters, they fly to heaven. When it came down to earth, the whole earth was wet with fertility, with various sources. Well, explain that Garuda is also called Trakshya, a mythical human being who has a bird's beak and claws as a bird of prey. In the Vedas, they're described as sun gods. The name Garutman, possibly the prototype Garuda, is associated with the sun, but not as a mount for Vishnu. Garuda is identified with everything consumed by sunlight, as well as snake predators or destroyers. So they destroy the Naga beings. And hence the nicknames Nagantaka and Sharpatarati. Mantram Garuda has the power to heal those who suffer from snake bites and are threatened by illness. The name Garuda was nicknamed Vinyaka, the nickname that he shared with Ganesha, both of which became the remover or destroyer of obstacles. Rudra is also said to manifest in the form of a mighty heavenly bird. The subsequent development of many of Garuda's stories and tales seem to be taken from the ancient stories, not from Aryan sources. The original meaning of Garuda has been forgotten. Therefore, they become more than just children's fairy tales like their counterparts in other countries. In Garuda Purana, it described Garuda that he is the king of the bird race. Garuda is described as devotion and sacrifice, blessed to be a divine vehicle. Some described Garuda as a mythical creature that might be a prototype of the phoenix conception. In sculpture, it is often seen in a pose with both hands stretched out with palms facing up. This posture signifies support, humility, and devotion to Lord Vishnu. The story of the post-Vedic Garuda can be found in the story of Adi Parva. Garuda was born from an egg given by Bhagavan Kashyapa to his wife Vinata. The egg hatched into Garuda. Described as a great bird when it comes, preceded by wind, lightning, and light, and that make the eyes go blind, with its wings flapping, making lumpy dust. All directions do not seem to be like covered by clouds. He described the sacrifice and devotion to free his mother from slavery. Garuda is Ajaraskaraska, Andahi. Eternal beings do not know aging and death, even without drinking Tirtha Amrta, the holy water of eternity. Some interpret the birth of Garuda as a liberator of humanity from grave sins. From the description of the Vedas and post-Vedas, two Garuda images are visible. Initially, Garuda was a god associated with the sun, providing prosperity for the world. Garuda is destroyer of obstacles. He is a holy mantra to destroy disease and poison. How interesting if you compare to the legends of other superior beings who came and gave knowledge around the world to the Indians or Native Americans in China, other parts of the world. How interesting. But back to Garuda. Furthermore, the understanding of Garuda developed into a high divine being, but still immortal, a picture of courage, sacrifice, and devotion in order to free his mother from a slave. That's his post-Veda illustration, developed in Bali, in Indonesia, making Garuda a symbol of human liberation from all attachments and slavery. Humans from birth have been enslaved by their desires and worldly pleasures, like Garuda being enslaved by the dragons. So again, we're seeing echoes of these long-forgotten battles between the Nagas, the snake people, and the civilization of the bird people. Only by virtue, sacrifice, and devotion, Garuda serves Lord Vishnu, and all worldly sins and lust can be purified. The Garuda decoration is symbolic, used to decorate the back of the center of the Indonesian Padmasana, part of the transition between human life to the level of the gods, or from the terrestrial beings to the galactic beings. Now, Vimana in its Sanskrit language is Vimana. Vimana in Sanskrit dictionary means measuring, crossing, chariots of the gods, air vehicles, resembling ships that can move themselves through the air. You should see my videos about Vimanas. Look in the playlist India. I try to bring all this knowledge accumulated through the years and more through my research. But another meaning for Vimana is a palace or 7-story tower. The first reference to vehicles capable of traveling in the air with the creatures or gods on board can be found in Rig Veda, in hymns addressed to the twin gods Ashwin and other gods. This heavenly vehicle is explained to follow in the footsteps of birds in the sky at speeds exceeding the speed of sound and mind. The word that has originally used to convey the idea of air vehicles was ratha, chariots, soaring towards the sun and the moon, usually usually descending to the earth at lightning speed accompanied by thunderous sound. Literally, references in Sanskrit are abundant to support ancient Indian knowledge in air flight. Literally, evidence from the Vedic age seems to indicate that the Hindus were familiar with the various types of metals and chemicals. The evidence also points to the existence of a kind of flying machine from the Vedic era. A Vedic sage named Maharshi Bharadvaja appeared in legitimate Hindu texts. One of these texts is Vimyanika Shastra, is a technical guide to the construction and use of Vimanas, flying machines from the Vedic stories. This manuscript concerns aeronautics of three types of Vimana planes, namely rurcla, Sundara, and Shakuna Vimanas. The development of Vimana in areas affected by India is almost the same as the origin of India, in the form of flying vehicles or flying terraced houses. In Indonesia, especially Java and Bali, it is more directed to the Ramayana story, describing Vimana as a contested great vehicle. Vimana is the vehicle of Lord Kuvera. Kuvera, the mysterious leader of the Yakshas, Guhyakas, and Rakshasas. Kubera is one of the 8 guards of the world. Jokapala, guardian of the 9 divine treasures, guarding minerals and precious stones hidden in the earth. See my, by the way, video about Nagas and hidden treasures. Therefore, he is considered a ruler who dwells in the womb of jewelry. Ravana came to defeat Kuvera, seized his throne, and then kidnapped Sita's wife Rama during their exile in southern India. Rama came to kill Ravana, captured Vimana to bring his wife Devi Sita back to Ayodhya. From this story, the shape of Vimana is depicted as having a giant face, a human body with a crown on its head, having wings like Garuda. On it sits Ravana. Vimana's next development is as a vehicle for Lord Swayambhu. Vimana is a picture of an aircraft that is able to deliver its passengers, both giants and gods, with speeds, again, exceeding the sound and mind. Imagine it, to the desired destination. Vimana, although the depth of its philosophy is not like Garuda, is still included in the symbolic variety of decoration. Its placement is the same as Garuda's Padmasana architecture, which is in the middle, the transition between the humans towards the gods. And I repeat, from the terrestrial beings to the galactic beings. But that's just my interpretation. But now I want to describe to you the research conducted by late Soviet Ukrainian writers and proponents of the ancient astronaut hypothesis and scholars of ancient advanced civilizations, Burgansky and Furduy. There are similar legends among the people who inhabited some areas of the Soviet Union, in particular Western Siberia. In the 19th century, an outstanding Russian scientist, academician Anuchin, wrote down the story of the Chutsky tribes of the Urals, about the gigantic intelligent bird Tokhtin-Karis, which flew from the south and could lift people into the sky. Can you imagine this and compare it to modern technology? If you can. Some Eskimo legends, by the way, talk about something similar. So to the ancient Persians, golden birds that carried gods or people came from the east. To the Indonesians, from the north. To the inhabitants of Western Siberia and to the Eskimos, from the south. The intersection of these directions gives us North India again, and it makes sense to move north to Tibet. In the 8th section of the Tibetan chronicle of the 14th century, the bright mirror of royal pedigrees, we're talking about the first Tibetan kings. This is traditional information, that is, one that existed only in oral retelling by the 7th century Common Era, because it is very brief. contains only the most important things. It is impossible not to pay attention to the fact that the first 7 Tibetan kings were able to move across the sky. They walked like a rainbow that disappeared into the sky. They appeared from the sky. They eventually returned there. As the celestials, for example, in the African legends, we would like to emphasize that these few words about the 7 kings have been passed down from the generation to generation for many centuries or millennia as something very important that was very necessary to convey for future generations. It is known that the ancient Tibetan traditions are very similar to the Chinese ones. Then why not look there, east of Tibet? According to ancient Chinese manuscripts, in the 3rd millennium before Common Era, the sons of heaven lived in the Yellow River Basin. Some kind of cultural heroes they were. The first of them, and by the way, I've talked about it in my videos about ancient aliens in China, but let me repeat this here. This is from other researchers. The first one of them, Huan Di, around 2450 before Common Era, had a stone basket, strong but surprisingly light, which floated freely over the sands in the wind. Here is how Lisevich, that Soviet Belarusian author and researchers I've mentioned before, here's how he comments on this place. A flying stone basket that is made of some non-metallic material could probably not fly very high. But the aliens had another aircraft. The ancient inhabitants of the Yellow River Valley, of course, dubbed it as the dragon, that aircraft. But the same ancient Chinese pointed with utter certainty to the strangeness and the similarity of this dragon from all others that are so often found in the Chinese folklore. They could be blue, red, white, and black, with or without horns, but only the one that Huang Di flew had wings and a metallic sheen. And the most interesting thing is that it was not indifferent to the weather conditions. It was due to adverse weather conditions that Huang Di once had to postpone a very important flight. Although, as stated in the original source, everything was ready and the dragon had already taken on water. The fact that he was afraid of the rain and the wind is very funny, since in Chinese mythology it is the dragon who is the ruler of the rain. But the dragon had a real technical prototype. But if the dragon had a real technical prototype, then this behavior becomes understandable. In some ancient Chinese sources, for example, the critical considerations of Wang Chuan, in the historical records of Shim Qin, 2nd century Common Era, and others, the scene of Huan Di and his companions' departure is depicted quite realistically. Huan Di, having mined copper on Mount Shushan, cast a tripod near the foot of Mount Jinshan. When the tripod was ready, a dragon with drooping whiskers descended from above Huan Di, and Huan Di climbed onto the dragon. All his assistants and their families followed him, a total of 70 persons. The other subjects couldn't get up, and all immediately grabbed the mustaches. The whiskers broke off and they fell to the ground. What's wrong? What could be wrong with a helicopter with overhanging steps? Ask those researchers. Emperor Shun, circa 2258 to 2203, before Common Era, legends tell, not only built flying machines, but also created a parachute. Emperor Chen Tang, 1766 before Common Era, ordered Qi Kun Shi to build a flying chariot. The ancient designer completed this task and carried out a test flight. He flew to Hunan province. Well, over time, the ship was destroyed by order of the same emperor, so it would not fall into the hands of enemies. In ancient Chinese manuscripts, we also find mention of the official Wang Gu, who built 2 large kites with a seat between them. He attached 47 rockets to the seat. 47 assistants had to set fire to all the rockets at the same time. Nevertheless, for some reason, one of them exploded earlier than it was necessary and set fire to the other rockets. Both the device and the inventor himself died in the fire or perished in the fire. Are there any rational grain in this description of flying chariots? Do they not reflect actual events that took place in ancient times and have come down to us in a distorted form through the abyss of centuries? But is it possible that the ancients actually used flying machines? After all, it is possible to build such a device only when certain heights have been reached in metallurgy, metalworking, and in many other areas of industry. Listen, I've done quite a research on ancient Chinese metallurgy and the use of aluminum and much more. And I gotta tell you, they reach heights. What happened to all the technology and high tech is only your guess. Probably perished in the same war that engulfed Mohenjo-daro, other parts of the world where we find remnants of ancient nuclear disasters and conflicts, or some vehicles could be stored down below in those underground cities of the Nagas. Archaeologists do not find traces of such a civilization, and apparently they could not have gone unnoticed during the excavations of ancient cities, but we do find interesting skeletons with radiation and a few other things. It's just that academic science doesn't like to talk about it. This is on one hand. On the other hand, we have already talked about the surprising high knowledge of the ancients, in particular in metalworking. So, who created the ancient aircraft and used them thousands of years ago? I think well before the legend of Atlantis. Well, I'll continue my research, and if you like my research, please help me through the links you'll find in the description to this video. I'll bring you more interesting stories from ancient past, because I've been doing this research for decades myself. I want to continue for as long as I can to find out about ancient civilizations that existed on our planet and reached heights we as yet have not, and maybe find out why they perished. And maybe we can make sure that ours doesn't perish in the flames of nuclear wars. Thank you for your attention to my work. Please like my videos. Please tell others about my channel.